Hello, I'm Mathieu from Ludovox, and today we are on the Black Spindle booth at Essen Spiel 2017 with Leo. Hi, Leo.
Hello there.
That was like a long mouthful. So we're there with your game, Mourne Quest, and it is a game that you co-designed with David.
Co-designer, and David Brayshaw is my co-designer in the company. We've worked together now for about 8 years on designing and developing games.
So who is this game intended for? How many players? What ages?
Well, it's a 2 to 4 player. It's a cooperative game. Age range sort of 12, 13 above, really. And the theme of the game, basically, it's based around a series of books that were written for young teenagers in Ireland by an Irish author called Gary McElhearn. And he lives in County Down in Northern Ireland, which is near the Mourne Mountains. And he created a couple of stories for kids and younger adults which surrounded the mythos of Ireland, and then sort of brought it a wee bit up to date and mixed it in with his surroundings and where he lived and the mountains of Mourne and the kingdom of Mourne and stuff like this.
Hence the name Mourne Quest. I do have a question. So this is a game, a cooperative game, you said it. So in a cooperative game, we have a way of winning and we have a way of losing. Can you specify them?
Well, basically, the ultimate goal to win the game is to defeat the bad guy in the center of the board. Okay. The basic storyline of the game is, in Ireland we have the Mourne Mountains, okay, Kingdom of Mourne. And in those mountains there was a wall built a long time ago which goes over 14 of the highest peaks. It creates a complete circle, it goes up vertical cliffs and across the highest point on 14 mountains. Inside that is what's known as the Silent Valley. Now, they try to tell us that they built that to keep sheep in. Nobody goes to that much trouble just to keep some sheep in. So we tried to think about, well, what are they keeping inside that wall? Okay. In the game, it's this guy here in the center of the board. He is called the Shimnivore. He is the Elder One's great war dog. He's been trapped for a long time in there, but now he has a plan to escape. As a player in the game, it's up to us to stop him escaping. So we have to ultimately defeat him, but there are a lot of obstacles that stand in our way before we even get to face him.
So do we embody a hero like these figures? We are those, right?
Yes, there are 6 characters from his books, which you can play one off, ranging from Jack, who's the star of the books, if you like. He's the main hero in the books, and he teams up with all these Irish. They're little people, essentially. You can't call them leprechauns because they don't like it. They're cluricons, okay? So different type of thing, but essentially they look like leprechauns, but don't ever call them that. So you can play either Jack or one of his little helpers. And what is happening? The Shimnivore in the centre, he's calling what we call the nightmares. They're the worst of Celtic mythology. So we've got the Dullahan, who's the original headless horseman. We've got the Changeling. We got the Merrow, it's like one of the water folk. And we got, of course, the Banshee. He's trying to call those to his aid to try and help him break free. And in the game, we got to stop that. That's simply done by there's a series of charms or resources we need to stop each one getting out. The mechanics of the game are when they start with their back to the center of the board. And after each player's turn, they start by having to roll one of these dice. This is a compass dice, so we've rolled east. So this disc here, he will rotate by one click. He's one step closer to coming into the board and getting to him. Next player moves their player, they move the counter on the Mourne track, they roll again. So as the game goes on, these discs rotate and these get closer and closer to coming on the board, okay? And the whole game ramps up in speed and pressure because in the center here we have a moon track. That controls the duration of the game. So the counter will move 2 circuits of that. For the first circuit, after every turn we roll 1 dice. When it completes the first circuit and starts its second, from then on we have to roll 2 dice. So 2 of these discs are going to turn after every person's turn. Also,
Except if we have a blank die, right?
and it's a blank die, it's just nothing moves. Okay. Okay. Also, in between each round, then we also have to look at these spawning points at the four corners. If they aren't covered either by an adversary or one of our own characters, for each point that's open, we must reach into the little bag and we draw. These are called bog bean tokens. Bog beans is a name for the little fairy folk, the little minor minions in the game. So for each one of these, we would draw a token. So for that one, I've drawn a treasure chest. So we would take a token from there and we drop it onto one of the crossroads nearest to that. The next player to pass through that can pick that up and trade it for a discovery card, which will give him something to help. If we draw one of these on the next point, which is open here, that has given us a level 3 bog bean. So this guy here, who's called a wart, he will spawn in that corner. So as well as trying to look after these guys, we've now got 2 of those to look after. And these little guys here, the minor daddies in the game, or the minor minions in the game, they're not really out to hurt you. They're not vicious creatures, but they do really like shiny things. So they will steal your charms and steal any resources you're carrying. So you got to try and defeat them and move on. So yeah, the game sort of ramps up in pressure as it goes on. Discs turn faster. More and more of the bad guys will spawn into the game.
So how do we defeat the monsters? So do we have to move to collect the resources? And how do we spend them to prevent the monsters from appearing or rampaging?
Yes, yeah. Okay. Well, there's 4 locations on the board where you can collect, we call them charms, but they're resources. And again, they're based on the actual geology of the mountains. We've got granite from the mountains, we've got gold from the streams, we've got flax from the linen fields, and we've got blackthorn, okay, which is a very hard, strong wood from the forests. So we collect those onto each one of our cards here. We can carry so many of them. To stop these guys from moving, we have to move on our turn onto one of their nexus points here, and we can then deposit what we are carrying here onto there. So we can drop one of those onto that. Once we get the 5th one on there, once we match those and get the 5th one out there, this guy will stop turning and he will be released. So he has failed to be summoned to the board. So we will win one of these, which is a reroll token. So that can sit there, and at any time after that point, if we need to do so, we can lift that and buy a reroll of one of the dice. It will also buy us a second dice. Combat starts with 1 single dice plus your basic stats on your card. As you go through the game, you can collect other magical weapons and items which you can add to your card. But for each one of these we release, we also get a second dice on the first one. When we release the next one, we will get a 3rd level dice, and we can have up to 4 dice, which we can choose to roll any 3 off in combat from that point on. So the game will continue on like that. Say once we get the second lap of that, we're now rolling 2 dice. When this completes its second rotation, this guy here is called into reality, okay? He's been trapped in the netherworld. He's now reality, is in our world, okay? What happens then, any of these characters who we haven't released, who are still on our discs, they will instantly come onto the board, okay? We still have a few of these guys here running around the board who were spawned and we haven't dealt with yet. But this guy here will start trying to destroy the wall as soon as he gets onto the board, okay? So previously, each player took their turn, they moved the moon tracker, they rolled the dice. Once he's in play, each player takes the turn. They still move the moon tracker because it also controls the strength and weakness of the beast at certain times, depending on the phase of the moon. But instead of rolling the dice, he gets his action at the end of each player's round. So the first action he will take, he's going to face north and he will attack the wall at that section. If there's nothing defending the wall, if we're not standing there trying to help, he will have a straight attack at that wall, in which case he rolls 1 dice. If he rolls anything but a miss, which I rolled there, he would have damaged the wall at that point, okay? If he rolled a successful hit, he destroys the wall at that section. The next player takes their turn, then he rotates to the next section of wall and he will attack that. There are 8 sections of wall on the inner circle. If he destroys 6 of those, he wins. Of course, if we're close to that, what we can do is we can move ourselves onto the next piece of wall he's going to attack. He can't get to the wall. He's going to attack us and that's going to hurt, but at least the wall's going to stand at that part. When you're fighting the characters through the game, again, everything sort of increases as you go through the game in difficulty. The level 1 and level 2, these small minion guys, they have 3 different stats. You only have to beat them on 1 of those to win. The level 3, you got to beat them on 2 of their stats. When you're fighting the nightmares, the guys on the discs, you got to beat them on all 3. And when you're fighting the Shimnivore at the end, he has 6 wounds essentially. You got to beat him on all 3 twice. So basically, to win the game, we got to release as many of these guys as we can, and then we got to stop him destroying the wall and eventually hurt him.
See you tomorrow.
Okay. And that's how we win. To lose the game, basically, if one of us dies, we lose the game, or if he manages to destroy 6 sections of wall, we lose.
So, what's the idea of the game? How did you come up with it?
Well, it was inspired by the books. We've worked with the author quite a bit now on this, but we liked the way that he had taken the old classic Irish mythology and put a new spin on it. He's created his own little pieces of more contemporary stuff and added it into the characters. And he had an idea himself that he would like to make a game of it, but he didn't really have an idea of how to do it. He had a couple of rough ideas he had tried to do. And to be honest, we didn't really like where he was going with the game, but we really liked the idea of the books. And we liked the characters, especially the hero characters that he created. We loved those, and we loved the whole idea of this wall holding this in. And especially because it has the tie-in to where we live. You know, all the places on the board actually exist in County Down in the Mournes. So that really excited us. And initially we thought about making it as a competitive game, but to us, the storyline in the books, it just didn't work. It had to be a cooperative game. It's just these guys work together. You couldn't have them competing against each other. So, yeah, and it was really, as far as mechanics go, I wanted to get something, and we've worked really hard to do this, to get something that it starts at a certain level of tension, but that tension just builds and builds and builds and builds. You know, you sort of say when you get near the end of this game, you sort of feel like, you know those guys that have the plates on the poles and they spin the plates and imagine having 4 of those spinning, and you're running from this and trying to keep this one spinning, but then this one is starting to turn a bit quicker, so you got to run over there and keep that one going. At the same time, you've got these guys come out and they're trying to poke you and pull that, and you're trying to kick those off and keep this plate spinning. So the tension just ramps up and up as the game goes on, and that's what we really wanted to have. Yeah, we were really pleased. We've been developing this for well over a year now, so we're very pleased with where we've got to on it now.
So I think it's going to go on Kickstarter, right?
Yeah, that's correct. We have, as you can see, everything's more or less ready to go. The sculpts are all done for the minis. We have all the artwork ready to go. We're just working on the final drafts of the rulebook itself, and we're compiling the campaign. So, yeah, Kickstarter, we're aiming to hit Kickstarter sort of mid to late January, with an aim to deliver in time for Essen next year. So,
today, why design a game today when there are 1,000 games a year? What can drive you to go there and put out your ideas?
It's just something we've always done, really, even before we started producing board games. Myself and David are longtime friends. And we used to play a lot of RPGs together from we were sort of late teens onwards. We were playing everything from RuneQuest and D&D to Cthulhu and 101 different games. And we started off, as everyone does, just playing from the books, but very quickly we started writing scenarios and stuff ourselves and creating our own storylines. Initially, David would have published some of those online. And we just got a love of gaming from that. And, my other job is as a graphic artist. So in my spare time, I would play around with making games like this. And it's just, there's a lot of enjoyment in the actual developing of the game and the creating it. And of course, it's a wonderful feeling when you see a finished product sitting on the shelf and see somebody picking it up and playing it and enjoying it. So.
Okay, thank you, Leo, for that overview of Mourne Quest, which we hope to see on Kickstarter really soon, next year in 2018. See you on Ludovox. Bye-bye.